Okay, we're live. Hello and welcome to the Illuminated Archetype. We are doing live chart reading with Alyson and Bella. Bella and I will be reading Alyson's charts. We're going to pull up her gene keys and her human design chart, and we're going to go deep into the purpose sphere, which she happens to have 3.1 in. This is the eternal child archetype. So that's going to be exciting. And Alyson, why don't you just give us a brief intro of kind of who you are and kind of what your intention is with the chart reading and connecting with us. That would be great.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm Alyson, and I got introduced to human design about 3 years ago and just like went super deep into it. And then about a year ago, got introduced to gene keys. So I've been just dabbling a little bit. And of course, I'm the 5/1, so I'm fascinated. Like, tell me everything. Yeah, and the more that I dive into it, it's made given me clarity of my work in the world and allowed me to just go down that path, even though it wasn't what like I thought I was going to do or what everybody around me is doing. It just sort of gave me the courage to go down the path of coaching and healing and energetic work and subconscious work and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wonderful. So I guess we're just going to dive right into your chart. So what we're doing this live, and normally we do it behind the scenes and recorded. And actually, me and Bella don't normally do chart readings together. We usually do them individually. So this is kind of cool. We do Illuminated Archetype on Tuesdays, but we only go like maybe a couple minutes per chart. So we're only going to be going into Alyson's chart, and we're going to go as deep as we can in about 45 minutes to an hour. We'll see how long this lasts. And if you have any questions, pop them in the comments. You can interact with Alyson, with me, with Bella. And obviously, Alyson, anything we say, you can ask questions about, and we'll pause to see if there's anything you want to illuminate in your chart too. But we'll try to weave the eternal child within all the different parts of your chart, because that's kind of the purpose, and it's such a pivotal point to have the eternal child in the purpose sphere. It means a lot. So, and we're going to go into why it means a lot.
Great.
So yeah, and also I would say too, because you are already into human design. So if you feel like we're going over something that you already know all about, cut us off, because we love to kind of, dive. So if you feel like we are into something that make us move on. This is your session. It's all about you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Here we go. Let's see. Okay, so this is your gene key chart. I think that I always like to start with human design first, just to get a read on how the energy works for you. So we'll start here, and then we'll spend most of our time in the gene key chart. So I see that you're a generator, but you only have 2 centers defined, and the rest are open with a completely open ego. But I see that you have 2 channels, the 2 and the 14 and the 10 and the 34. So those are your strengths. And I think that, having a completely open ego is interesting, with also having your defined G, because that's all about love, direction, and self and identity. And so it's kind of like, who you are, what you love, but it's like, are you worthy enough to choose that path? Because you do have the 2 and the 14. Like you were saying, you're kind of transitioning into like a different role than you're used to, and it's like, am I worthy of this path? Am I worthy of this direction? So that's really beautiful to see that playing out in your life right now. What sticks out to you, Bella, or what did you want to say about this?
I mean, if I go really deep right away, and I think we're going to see this, as we move on, what's really standing out to me is that your Pluto on both sides is the 46 and your core wound is 46. So I know that there is something really, really deep that your soul is resolving in this lifetime that has to do with the love and acceptance of being here in physical form, and to go from just, first of all, that acceptance and into the delight and the ecstasy that you can feel in this vessel. And how I see it on the first level, when I look in your chart, I see there is so much openness. So you're constantly flooded in all the white centers. You're constantly flooded. You're like a filter for everything that's on the outside, situations, people, energy, like everything comes into you. And I can understand, having the 46 myself, that to have all that coming into you, then it can be kind of a like feeling bombarded in this form and not really trusting the form. But what I see is that the 46 for you, it comes from a defined G center, and it goes into to the sacral, but you only have the 46, but you have it in a defined G. So for me, it is a key for you, because it comes out from a center that actually is who you are, where you're going, and knowing what love is. Love for the physical form, and it's connected also to your self-love and the behavior that you have in the world that is going to lead you to use your energy right. So now we're like really looking at that part of you that is defined, where the energy comes from you in the sacral and in the G, and it goes out into the world. For me, there is something that I want to unravel when we look at both charts, to see what is this 46 and why is this so core, so crucial for you.
How does that resonate?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I did feel like a few years ago, I just had this moment of like, I can't even think straight. There was so much coming at me, like people's opinions and thoughts and what they do and how they do it. And I just literally was like, oh my God, everybody needs to I had to, like, I moved away. I actually told friends that I was like, I can't talk to you for a while, because I just needed to like clear everyone's energy out. So that totally resonates, and definitely like connecting more to my body and feeling in my body in a different way. I was a competitive athlete for years, and so it was just like, just go, 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 go. And I had no like sense of myself in my body. So that's been probably in the last 10 years, is like, just, oh, how do I actually feel in my body, and what really feels good? And so definitely all of that resonates.
Yeah, and I would just say also how I see you have another thing that's really special. It's a completely open center. So you have the will center, the ego center. You have nothing. So that's what I often see in athletes and people that can, you can push yourself. There's no the way you can, what you can do to prove yourself. It's like, there is no measure, because it's completely open. There's no limit to what you could actually do. So that's goes together with what you're just saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I could go out and run 20 miles sometimes, and I have done that before. And then I'm like, what? How did that happen? And then other days, like, it's not sustainable though. For sure.
No, and that is what I feel. I mean, this is when I see an open center and I work with somebody who is a coach or do some awareness work in the world. I say, okay, if you are at a certain awareness level and you work with the world, wherever you have a completely open center, that is often part of what professionally you're just going to flip that. You have all the experience of that not self, so you're going to flip it, and suddenly you're going to be able to have people understand it in themselves, and to find that awareness. And this center is about proving yourself, is about worthiness, is about valuing yourself. So it's like, I feel like that is part of what you're helping people with your energetic work, with your coaching work, because it's something that you have lived so much. You didn't even have a reference point, so you had to learn from everything that came into you and everything that it made you do, so that now you can actually, for 10 years, you've been able to see it from the wisdom side more than from the condition side.
Yeah, thank you.
That's so cool. I love how much we can pull out of a chart. It's like, thank you again for being so vulnerable and allowing us to do this live, because it is like everything is on here. You can't really hide anything here. It's all in front of us, And I love that you're going into healing, because, I mean, again, the 46 is all about the body. And of course you were an athlete, but with the 34, I mean, you could have pushed your body to the limits. And I'm wondering, did you have to go through some sort of healing process yourself? Because like, what was happening in your body? Because you do have the 50 in your radiance, and that's all about your health. So it's like corruption. And the first line is the body, bones, like what's happening there. So what did you go through yourself personally as far as healing in your body?
fortunately, knock on wood, like nothing traumatic, nothing like super big. I definitely had issues around my cycle, like had to heal that, like my connection with my cycle, because that was off all the time. And that was one big awareness. And then I also had jaw clenching for years. Like it took up so much of my energy. Like, how do I get rid of this? And every doctor was like, you wear a night guard. And I was like, but no, there's like a reason behind it. Why did I do this? Because it was when I was asleep, I would clench my teeth really hard and I broke a tooth. And so that was like one of my biggest journeys, was unraveling that, like, what was the cause behind that? Like, why would I even do that? I did a lot of, they were like, oh, meditate and do yoga. And I did that, but it wasn't the reason behind it, actually. And a big part of it was kind of living other people's lives, or what I expected. And when I started to just do my own thing and go like, oh, this feels good to me, even though it like doesn't make sense and it's not logical, somehow it feels good to me. And then reflecting on when I did that, things always worked out. But when I would get really logical and strategic, everything stopped. Like the flow of energy just stopped, and whatever I was working on just like screeched to a halt. It was actually like getting in touch with my own energy and how I'm meant to interact with life and the world, and being responsive, not initiating, was also a big thing. So it kind of was like giving myself permission to be me, and that helped release like all the resistance I was holding in my jaw.
I love that. I mean, Ashley, I recognize you and me, open-headed, ajna, and open emotional. I can see how those centers, you say, don't be strategic, and like wanting to make other people expectations and wanting to make other people happy. Of course, it's the ego too. I had ajna, ego, and emotional open. So I see that pattern, and also what would lead to in the 46 and the, that seriousness, that constriction, that trying to do it that way. So it makes a perfect sense that first line in the bones of the 50 would actually come into balance instead of being in corruption when you made those changes. Yeah.
All right.
Ashley, would you say something about being a 5-1 and having an open throat? Because I feel like that's such an interesting theme, and I wouldn't be able to speak to it, I think, as much as you would. I think there is something in being a coach, a 5-1 and an open throat.
I think that in 5-1, obviously here to voice. I mean, the 5-9 throat.
But you're cutting out a little bit.
Okay, I was thinking that because the internet was being weird. I'm cutting out, and then I'll kick my kids off a video game because I'll take it again. But still, I think I might. As a 5, having an open, really to respond.
You are cutting out still.
Yeah. Then talk about it. So I'll go.
Actually, we can't hear you.
Okay. Just talk, and I get the internet.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I can ask you, Alyson, the open throat. Like, what is your feeling of having a throat that is, the way that you speak in the world? You always have to discern what's coming in, filtering through you, and discern what's your voice and what is something that somebody wants you to say. Like, how do you relate to having that openness and also being a voice for leadership as a 5-1?
Yeah, it's been very interesting. Discovering all of my open centers has been fascinating and also life-changing. So with the open throat, sort of waiting to respond to things and letting the energy build, and almost waiting for the invitation a lot of times, like waiting for the right timing. Because in the past I would think, oh, I have to tell this person this, or I have to say this. And a lot of times it wasn't received, or, I would try too hard to tell a story and it just fell flat. Or like in a big group, sometimes I had a hard time being heard. And so now I sort of learned like, oh, let me just sit back. And when the timing is right, or somebody will inevitably say, oh, what do you think about that? And then I have like the energy, and it's so noticeable to me, the difference in like trying to initiate a conversation as opposed to waiting to respond to something or waiting for right timing.
And you feel like your leadership can come through even if you're asked for it, or you feel like that's not really leader? Like, can you feel how it's still leadership, or do you feel sometimes confused? Is this really leadership if they are asking me? Like how?
Well, it feels yeah, it can be leadership, because it's almost like when somebody's asked like, what do you think I should do? And then I have the voice to lead in that way.
I love that. I feel for you, for anybody who has this, the 5-1 and the open throat, when you can feel in you that is still leadership, like that is already, that is a very good way of, you have come far, So it's like, it's just a sign that you are, I feel like you're understanding your human design chart really well. And that makes me happy, because when we go into the journey of the gene keys, when the human design is already functioning and the energy is circulating the way that we want it to circulate, I can just say something before Ashley comes on about it. No, come on first, Ashley. I want to say something about the 214 before we move on, but I want to hear your 5-1 open throat. I don't know. I feel like there's something that wants to come through you, Ashley.
There is, but I mean, can you hear me? Is everything good now?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay. I kicked all the kids off the internet, but we'll see what happens. So you were asking about having an open throat and then being a 5-1, right?
Yeah, and maybe even looking, because she has 2 gates there. I mean, there's some wisdom there that I can feel.
Yeah, it looks like you have the 62 and the 23. Like I was saying earlier, before it was like cutting out a lot, I feel like it's really important, again, to wait to respond, and to also, like, when you're speaking, it's like you need that opportunity to warm up your throat. It's like you're not going to just have it in the get-go. You have to kind of plug into something. And then it's so awesome having the open head, ajna, and throat, because it's just like it flows right through and then comes out. So like you have this like open channel to be a channel, and then be able to be that voice for that person. And so you have a lot of impact, because when you connect with somebody, you can connect to their way of speaking, and you just speak straight to them in the language that they understand, You're channeling for them. And because you're 5th one, it has that mystery and allure, so like people are going to come
a little bit closer, Ashley, just a little bit closer.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now it's better.
Okay, I'm just going to I'm sorry, all this technical difficulties. I don't know what's going on. But I don't know, having so much openness and being a 5-1 allows you to really have a lot of impact, because you can plug in completely to that person and then speak that to the person, and then you have that sort of leadership that people will recognize and listen to you. So like your words matter to them,
Yeah, I definitely feel that. The more that I've like stepped into my design, and sort of let go of all of the stuff that's not me, and allowed it to be open and trusted that, like sometimes I'll be talking and I kind of like, what just came through? Or somebody will say like, remember you said that? And I'm like, no, but that's cool. Like I had like it wasn't me. It just like came through me. And it's like it like took me some warming up to do, and it took a while for it to happen. So yeah, that's what it feels like.
It's really cool to be able to like connect into somebody and then channel for them. That's what's really cool about having the open head, ajna, and throat. But sometimes we put a lot of pressure into those centers to like pull from there. And you have the 61 in your sun. I'm going to switch to your gene key chart, but you have the 61 in your sun, which makes it like it's all about having that inspiration and letting those things drop in too. But you're not here to have pressure to perform or have these ideas or have this inspiration either,
Mm-hmm. And it's not strategic, really. It's like even if we look at the arrows around the head, you have a lot to the right. So your brain is a right brain. It's not a strategic brain. So that's why we, like we were saying, when you stop being strategic and you are more open, when you don't pretend to be certain, that is when things can come through you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a relief.
Right, isn't it? We all have open head in Ajna.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like the 2, so the 2 is my life's work, and I'm going to look on my phone because it's a small, yeah, you have the 2 in your Saturn. So it's part of, the law, not the law, it's part of the rules, the judge. Like if you are not orienting in every moment, that's like, when it's important to warm up a little bit, like you are in, the 2 is always in the energy, and that's a rule for you. That's where you would be kind of cut or judged if you don't follow your Jupiter, which in your case, I can't even see right now. Yeah, it's here. So your Jupiter is the 34. That's interesting too. So you, like, when you don't listen to that orienting in every moment, you fall into the it's like the forcing and the orientation is important. So with that second gene key, that is your only full, it's your one of 2 full channels. It's so important for you to always orient yourself with the energy, to be that GPS and to see what's going on. And then when you are GPSing, you have the energy from your sacral that is going to give the energy. So that's where we want you to be focused, sacral and G. And the rest is just like this beautiful machine where things can come in, but that's not where you put the focus. You just have to put the focus on those 2 centers, and you have 2 channels. The other channel is like behave in a way that makes you feel comfortable. And that is also when that 34 is going up to majesty and not kind of in the trying to do whatever you're trying to do. So I feel that's beautiful. And you should be somebody who easily has money, when you are orienting with that feminine, you are here to be able to have resources to do whatever you want with. So do you feel that? Do you feel also that, in that sense, when it comes to resources, when you've come in more to true design, that is flowing better? Or is that still something that we should look at in the Pearl sequence of abundance and prosperity and those things?
This is very new. Because I feel like I was so conditioned to do things in like a logical and strategic way. So it's been like, that's been one of my biggest deconditioning things. So I would like to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's exciting. Let's go into that in the Gene Keys as well.
I still can't quite believe it. I'm like, wait, really? Can it be like this? So yeah.
So can you guys see the Gene Key chart? Is the Gene Key chart up?
No, or it's the other chart still.
Okay, let me pull it down then, because I want us to see the Gene Key chart. There we go. Gene Key now?
Now it's nothing for right now.
Okay, it'll come up in a second.
I just see the void.
This is the silence. We're getting into the silence to center ourselves. Oh, cool. It came up. Well, for me, can you guys?
I can see.
Okay. Okay, it'll come up in a second. Well, okay, so we're going to go into the Gene Keys, and we're going to go through the activation sequence, because I think that that's super important for you to understand from the get-go. So the activation sequence is your genius, and it's what you bring to the table, right? And then we move into the Venus sequence, and you start to heal yourself, your relationships, open your heart, and from that place of open-heartedness, you move into the Pearl sequence, where you're going to liberate your prosperity and actually bring that genius into the world. And it's so cool to be able to look. We're going to start looking at the eternal child, because this is Illuminated Archetype. I feel like we've been in human design talk for a while now, but to really thread the eternal child throughout this is so important, because your purpose of being and the quality of your consciousness, and also like your reason for being in this body, is to be like a child. And it's so flipping cool that you have the 46 in your vocation, which is actually what imprints the SQ, which is all about being in the body. So like, you're here to understand what's it like to be the eternal child in your body, and like to tap into that eternal child is what's going to unlock a lot for you. And yeah, I think there's no limit to who you are and what you're going to be doing in the world, because it's just what you're inspired with. And so there should be no clinging to anything. Like the third gene key can tend to cling to the old, but you're supposed to be fluid, and you're supposed to move with the cycles and the rhythms of however life is taking you. Like you're riding on that wave, right? And so it's just, what do you identify with? What are you excited about? And that's where you go into, because you're going to start feeling like, I'm not inspired anymore. And then it's going to shut down all of your faculties, because it's like you're not going to, it's not fun anymore. Bella has the 61 in her SQ. I can relate to the 61. You also have the 9, which is programming partner of the 16, which is about enthusiasm. So it's just going to strike you. And then you're gonna be like, oh, I'm excited about this. But you have to partner with the 62, where it's about kind of going deeper and understanding it, like the factual things about it, and then being excited too. So you can't just be like, oh, I'm so flippant, let me go over here and over here and over here and over here. It's like, you got to commit to something. Your 46 doesn't have the 29. So it doesn't have the devotion there. It's just going to be like, let's have all these experiences in this body, but then there's no devotion to it. So I think that that's one thing, is like, you commit to something, and that's where you can, what the energy that you don't have is what you want to pull in, because it's supporting that, I just said a lot, sorry. Where do you want to go, Bella?
I mean, I always kind of want to go into the middle of everything, but I love I loved everything that you were saying. And I mean, I want to go into the star pearl at the end of it. I want to go into the Venus first, because that's how the star pearl and abundance and all that is like laying, on the stability of the Venus. And if the Venus is completely still, like, and the inner child is like this, we are not going to be able to build that vehicle that is going to take us everywhere. So I understand that the 14.1 and the 14.2, the SQ and the EQ, was what made you start looking at this. So for me, I'm wondering, your childhood, your adolescence, like, what was the compromise, and what was it that made you feel not safe, and what was it where there wasn't any true mirroring? I would like to hear just a couple of sentences to understand, where you come from.
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of 4 kids, so there was a lot of compromise of like, you can't do everything all at once. And so that was one big thing I learned, to like, you compromise from there. And then the other thing, I pulled up all my siblings' charts, and everyone has ego center defined. and my mom used to say, like, I always thought I had to do everything that everyone else did, not like one thing, but like all of them. And they all have pretty strong charts, 2 manifesting generators, 1 generator with only 1 or 2 open centers. So they're mostly defined. So it was a lot of like me just like following along and doing what everyone else did. So yeah, that's.
And what about like your rhythm and because you were the youngest, like was the rhythm and the routine, it felt like it's almost more set up for the big ones, and you kind of had to be like, in a rhythm that maybe wasn't yours. I think that could have to do with that feeling of like, it's not safe, I have to run all the time, or something like that.
Yeah, totally. It was like, just throw her in the car, we're gonna do this, we gotta go there.
Yeah. And that is so
everybody else's rhythm.
Yeah. So that is the SQ, and that's part of like what could still, be part of the life experience. And then in the EQ, so that's when you're a little bit older, maybe when you start school, I'm wondering about like, who was your true mirror? Who had that true understanding and reciprocity? Like, was that in all the relationship? Was it almost nowhere? How do you relate to having a true mirroring in your adolescence?
Like somebody else?
Yeah, exactly. So this is in your relationship. It looks like from 8 years old. Or was it some relationship where that true mirroring broke down and it felt like completely not seen, or completely not? That's what I'm wondering, because there is a second line there, and that is kind of, that is part of the imprinting. So I'm just seeing if we can get some information on what broke down in 8 to 14 that probably had to do, it could be aggression, but it could also be more subtle. That's like not
interesting. I never realized, but my brother had to go to a different school, so my mom pulled me out of my school and sent me to the other one with him. like a Catholic school. So I went to Catholic school from 8 to 14, just sort of following along.
Yeah, so that is an aggression on a child that had to run their whole life and not feel their own rhythm. And then suddenly at 8, you're pulled out from whatever you are and you're thrown into something else. And it's like nobody who really looks at you and sees like, I hear you, I understand you, I think this is the best thing for you. No, you're just like, it's like an aggression. So that's what
just go with them.
Exactly.
Go to one place rather than two. Yeah.
And that would fortify. I mean, that's the compromise. It's like almost like this anchoring the compromise. That's the only thing that you're here for. And then what we would say is that those two places are uncomfortable, to feel like you always have to run into somebody else's rhythm and to have that aggression happening to you. So what we see is that then when we go into the IQ, which is a 9-3 for you, that you are going to hang out there in order to not reproduce the other two. But that means that you're going to live with a mind. You're not going to have your emotional intelligence. You're not going to have your physical and spiritual. You're going to hang out in the IQ. So that would be somebody who's very strategic, a third line. It would be somebody who's very quick in their mind in order to not fall into that emotional compromise, aggression, not safety, not rhythm. And also somebody who's going to be determined with their mind. So living completely from the not self of the open head and the open ajna. And you could live your whole life in that. And you would clench your teeth more and more and more and more. But every time you clench your teeth, you would have like a fast thought, a strategy of something. So it would be perpetuating in that thing in you and completely out of your inner authority. But I feel like you are not, like you're not stuck there. What would be important is that then in your own life, you would put yourself in situations where you could find a true mirroring, where there is this, you know, when you come in a situation where you feel like somebody's just pretending that you're going to come along, it would be like, can we wait a moment? Can we actually mirror each other? This is how I feel about the situation. Or like even say, I would like us to feel, what do I feel? What do you feel? And then to create those opportunities for my voice and your voice. Because when you create that, that's when your emotions, like that's when you can flourish emotionally. Before there is that true mirroring in relationships, you are not going to be able to create relationships that feel balanced. You're always going to be the little sister, or, you know, whatever that archetype is that doesn't feel emotionally completely seen. And do you feel like you have that in your relation? Like, do you feel like you have been able to create that in your adult relationships?
Just recently. Yeah, that's a very recent thing.
Yeah.
But I hadn't looked at it in that way. So that's very interesting.
And it's so important because that's how you see, that's the pathway of intelligence, IQ, EQ. So you're reclaiming your whole intelligence, intellectual and emotional. And that's also how you start to be able to have the courage to go back to the inner child that says, I'm not safe in this world. I have to run too fast, or I have to have to become an athlete. You know, that is kind of the kind of like, it makes me laugh because that's what the inner child would do. I have to be good enough. I have to be fast enough. I have to run 20 miles, you know. But that is a compromise on the body. The SQ is 0 to 7 years old. So that's like, it's when your physical body is developing. It's when you're putting in the cell memories where you don't have the capacity for emotional processing or intellectual processing. So they're staying there. So we want you to have the emotional, the intellectual, and the courage to go back and give your body, you know, rhythm, routine, listening to what's good for you, like listening into your bones and see, are you not happy bones? And then give yourself the opportunity to make that depth, you know, that depth of being you, which goes into the core, that has to do with depth and listening. No, it's not. Oh, it is the 46. It's not the 48, but it has to do with being in the body and being happy in the body. So I would say for you, every time your inner child doesn't feel safe, it's important for you to be there and be like, okay, you are safe. We're not going to have to run with 3 bigger sisters. You're safe. I'm going to listen to your rhythm. I'm here with you. So that's part of the inner child work. And look at the compromise when that comes up, so that you can reparent yourself to feel safe, to feel in your rhythm, to feeling what's, you know, what's your way of doing it. And I want to add one more thing to that what will help this process for you is your inner masculine, which is Saturn, which is 23-3. You can look at the recording afterwards, but that is about spontaneous expression. And it's a third, I think it was a third line. So for you, it's so important, again, to not strategize. Your stability comes from spontaneous expression. So when you feel like drawn into something where you don't are in your, when you're not in your rhythm, when you can go into your emotional intelligence, your EQ that needs mirroring, and say, okay, like I'm gonna have to say now spontaneously, I feel like I'm not in my, we're not doing this in a reciprocity way. And then you can stop it right there. You're creating stability in the moment when it happens. And it's also how I feel you pull your genius in when you work with people, because you're creating for them a space where you are channeling through your, through your spontaneity, and that creates stability in the world because you have stability in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. Yeah. When I can get comfortable with spontaneity and just like, okay, it's all gonna come through, like I trust that. Yeah, like magic happens. But not under pressure, not under like forced. It's like really tapping into like, does this feel good to be spontaneous in this way, or does this, yeah.
And it's only going to happen when the inner child is safe and in rhythm. That's the thing. You can never really access Saturn if Venus isn't happy. And like Ashley and I always say, the lock is the line, or the key is the line, and the lock somehow is the 14. So your competence comes through, but it has to happen through that line of rhythm. So if you're not in rhythm, your spontaneity, empowered spontaneity, is very hard that it would come through.
It's rhythm, and it's also safety, and it's that certainty, that peace. Like your rhythm will come naturally, but I think that it is for you to be able to feel safe being spontaneous is what's important, is like getting that safety, because you have the child, the inner child, the eternal child in your purpose sphere, and this is like who you are. That's like your greatest purpose in life, is to be that eternal child. But if your eternal child was always, if your inner child was always compromising, it could never be spontaneous, because it's like, hold on, someone's going to rip me out of this and pull me somewhere else. Like, I can't be spontaneous here because I'm going to be taken from here and put over here. It created this like, I'm going to go into the details of things. I'm going to go into the minutia of things for that 62 that's in your evolution. I need to know the facts, and the facts are what make me safe. Right? But everything you need to know right now. So when you're like coaching your clients, when you're like living in the moment, it's like spontaneous expression. That means you don't need to prep anything. You don't need to know anything. Everything you have comes in you, and it's probably contradictory to what you have done, because your mind is like, what are the details? What are the facts? And because the facts and the details are my foundation, that's how I create safety for myself, because I never felt safe to be spontaneous just being me, because you're super open. And so you needed the facts to create the container for you to be spontaneous. But really, is that spontaneity if you like are controlling and manipulating so that you show up this way, Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's gonna like that's gonna need to like sink in a little bit.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is like letting go. There's like a surrender. I mean, I could see the runner in you, like the physical runner. I feel like that's how you probably connect to your eternal child too, is through the feet on the concrete. You create the rhythm through your running, and that's probably where you connect to that eternal child. So if you can run. It's just don't run forever. Like, you're not Forrest Gump. I think I'm done now. I think I'll turn around. It's like, connect to that, and then ask to receive, like your 3's in the bottom, right? That's your purpose. The 61's at the top. So I bet you get tons of amazing ideas when you're running.
I do. Yeah. I actually like kind of force myself to go running twice a week right now, just because like I feel so much better after I do it. And it's like, I used to be competitive, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter how fast I go. I'll just like go for, 2 miles or 3 miles, or I don't know, whatever. Just being very free with it, like whatever feels good. And yeah, I feel like it clears my energy, like clears stuff out for me. I'm grounded after I run. And I notice if I don't do physical exercise, I get like, like I drank a ton of coffee.
You don't even need coffee. You have a defined sacral and you're a generator.
I don't drink coffee anymore. It didn't work for me. It made me crazy.
I'm sure.
I feel like a way into the pearl would be to look, if you look at the middle pillar, you see 3.1, like all these one lines, 3.1.
1. Oh my gosh.
So there's like all these first line: attraction, purpose, SQ, pearl. So we see the individual, running is not a social thing. It's like, it's super individual. And I would actually look at the pearl here and say, simplifying. How can you simplify your life so that your majesty comes through, so that your inner strength is fortified, you could say. So that is the essence of you. It's like a life that is simplified in a way so it suits you, not your brothers and sisters. Like that's completely what kind of your soul came here to go through, to remember that that's not the way it has to be. It came here to remember truth, that you're an individual, and your whole pillar of individuation is individual up until your life's work, that is leadership. But your leadership comes from the very grounding in that individuality, grounding in the feet, grounding in the bones. So that is your signature. You could say your leadership comes from a place of your own empowerment. And that is the simplification, a lot of the simplification of who you are. And I want to go into the prosperity thing a little bit. So this is something that Ashley, I think it was Ashley and I, or it was Simone and I, we were looking at the 46 and the 44 together. I have those two, and I don't resonate with the tribal leadership of the 45. It is a lot about like dominance. It leads to synergy in the higher frequencies, but it's very tribal. I believe more in the leadership of the 44, that is a synergy, seeing everybody in the right place and doing teamwork. And I think that even your coaching, somehow it's a teamwork, because you're channeling and it comes through, and then it's a kind of teamwork. What I can see in your vocation and your culture is that, and what we saw with Simone, is that when you pair the 46, that for you comes through humor and from like lightness, not seriousness and like super stress. The low frequency would be seriousness and strategy. That's the low frequency of your vocation. The high frequency is playfulness, humor, and delight. It's that kind of energy that would fuel you. And combined with the teamwork and like, you are a manager, but you do it through putting everybody in the right position. You're not doing it through like telling them details of how to do through your open throat. So when you have that 44 of teamwork, and you have that 46 of like being here in playfulness, grounded in your own body, I feel like you're creating a new leadership in the world, which is the new tribal leadership, the new 45, the new kind of synergy communion. And you're also, through that, healing your core wound from your childhood of like not being mirrored, not having a world that is made for you. Because in the communion, it is going to be the best for everybody. So there is something very important there. And I would say, anytime you feel interference in a partnership, in a group setting, that is something to look out for. Because in the culture, we say, what would stop your money, from flowing, your abundance flowing? In your case, the shadow of the culture is interference. And I know that, like, when I have the 44 in this position too, when I can feel, when my open center feels like something is off in a partnership, I know that if I continue, it's not going to lead to money. It's going to lead to loss of energy. And that's important for you to really to see if there's good teamwork, a lot of possibility for abundance and leadership. If there's interference from the beginning, don't go to think it's going to solve itself, because probably it won't solve itself.
That's totally true. You're just explaining the last 2 years of my life.
Okay.
Awesome. I think that what I wanted to also like wrap up and explain really quickly is obviously your genius comes from the activation sequence. Like, that's where you can look to see, like, who am I? What are my gifts? So that your open ego or will center is no longer in comparison or competition. When you can fully ground into, like, this is my uniqueness, this is who I am, you no longer need to look at the other track. Like, you're not racing against anyone else. There's no finish line either. It's like, you are you, and there's no end in sight. It's like you get to just run for the sake of it, like run for the joy of it. And I kind of wanted to like go into your pathway of individuation to just summarize it really quickly, because I feel that, and me and Bella have been, we went into our membership group, Unlock Your Design, and we kind of, it's so cool to be able to weave this and say, okay, starting here with the eternal child, this is what unlocks for you. And this is how you go from the roots to actually the flower, and then like the seeds going into the winds. Like, how can that happen for you? Because we're all like dandelions. So the root of everything starts here with your 3.1. So the eternal child is your being. So when you tap into that, and in yourself, it's the first line. So the reason you came here to be in your body is to be that eternal child. Like that's why you're here. And then the relationships that you attract to you, your magnetic field and what you're experiencing, you're here to have relationships that are expansive. So it's not about having all these relationships. It's like, you're very selective. You're like, I'll be friends with you. I'm going to be a partner with you. It's like the soil needs to be fertile for you to grow in. If it's not fertile, you're like, bye, that's not happening. So you have to be able to like let go of the ones that aren't like fertilizing your soil. Basically, it's like you get to decide, yes, I'm an individual and I choose to bring you in here. And in those choiced relationships is where you experience expansion. And from that place, you move into your SQ, where it's like, this is the key to your heart. This is your truest expression. What's going to unlock that is like, don't compromise who you are. Knowing who you are, knowing what your skills are, knowing what your talents are, and being like, I am fully competent and capable in being me. And like, I choose you. It's like, you're not going to compromise yourself for anyone else. You have that empowerment about you. So it's all about having self-empowerment there in your heart. Your heart is what's going to empower you. And then your pearl, that's your holy grail. It's like the cup that you drink from, right? And so the gift that you give to yourself, that you drink from for yourself, is that 34, that 4 strength majesty. I love looking at that as like, when you can surrender your own like agenda and what you want, and just let like your spirit flow through you, it's like you are limitless. And it's like there's no exhaustion, there's no force, there's nothing like that. You're like a Mustang running in the wild. Like nobody can catch you, nobody can stop you. It's so cool. So like when you give that gift to yourself of fully being in your body and letting your spirit just take you, you get to just like roam free, like run free in the fields of anywhere. And that's what's going to unlock the inspiration for you. And that's your responsibility in the world, is to share your inspiration. Everything else is the first line, right? Individual, 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 individual. Then from that place of freedom and empowerment, you get to share your inspiration with others. That's your purpose, this whole pathway. So yeah.
How do you know somebody so much after 15 minutes? It's like
I know, right? I love this. I love these systems. It's like, can I just have your chart? I want to know what I'm getting into.
I know. I want to like be like, before I talk to you, or before I like get too close, let me just see you.
What's your birth date and time and location?
I actually did that for someone that I'm partnering with in work. I was like, hey, can I just have you? And she was totally into it. And it's been a really beautiful partnership. So
do you have any questions, like for us, now that we've kind of like unloaded all this stuff on you? What do you still have questions about, or where are your eyes kind of lingering?
Let's see. You just made a whole lot of sense. That like I've looked at the gene keys sequence or the chart and just kind of like, I don't know what that means, but so you made a lot of sense there. I understand, much more. Yeah, I think it's a practice of just sort of taking it all in and surrendering to, and like allowing myself to have that eternal child and that playfulness. Cause I feel like, being the youngest, I always felt like the baby, but people always like actually was part of my nickname, baby. So I kind of felt bad about it, but actually now I feel like, oh, this is something I can embrace, and actually instead of like push it away as being a negative thing, this is like permission to just embrace that. And it doesn't mean I'm like the baby anymore, which obviously I'm not. But yeah. It's also fascinating. Yeah. I think I'm just gonna surrender to it and just let it all sort of sink in to my cells.
Marinate a little bit.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us here and lending us a little peek into your life. Yeah. I mean, there's so much more, like we could go on forever, but I feel like it's complete for now. You know,
I know I do have like 1,000 other questions, but actually like, but I also have enough for now.
Yeah. Awesome. Bella, did you want to say anything else before we wrap up?
No, I'm good.
Let's see. Did anybody have any questions?
No, not really.
No. Aw, thanks for the compliments, everybody. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining. And if Alyson, you'd stay on a second while we end the broadcast, we'll have like wrap it up a little bit with you. But thank you everybody who's joining live, and we truly appreciate you coming on here and witnessing and commenting. And I hope that this was helpful. And I hope that anybody on Alyson's fractal line would find this video and find some peace from it. You know, help you unite with yourself by what Alyson has gone through, because there's some kind of like resonance with her and why you're here. So if you want to reach out to Alyson, you can. If you want to reach out to me and Bella, we are more than happy to speak with you. So thank you again and have a wonderful rest of the evening.